cross. I'm missing you all. I hope everyone's doing really well and looking after yourselves and staying safe. I thought it would be really nice for us to share a book together. So I'm going to start reading The Secret Dragon. We're going to do it a chapter at a time, upload a new video every now and again so that we can read the story together. So I'm going to start today. It's got a bit of a prologue to set us up to tell us what's going to happen in the story. So let's start with that. It was probably a Saturday or a Sunday when it happened, most likely in early September. But those details weren't important to Mary. What was important was she remembered very clearly what had happened that day. It was one of those things that changed you forever, made you somehow special, but not in a way you'd ever wish on yourself. Mary's parents had taken her for a picnic on the cliff tops at Worm's Head in Rossilly, an hour's drive from their farm. When she closed her eyes, she could still feel the soft bluster of wind baffling off the great bay. It swept round to an island that snaked out into the sea like a giant dinosaur trying to break free from the rock cliffs holding it captive. She could still see her little 5-year-old fingers engulfed by one of her father's giant farmer's hands as they picked their way along the path, the roughness of his work-toughened skin scratching reassuringly against hers. They laid out a blanket beneath a solitary beech tree that had somehow fought off the fierce coastal winds to stand proudly alone. Nestled against its trunk, sipping autumn apple juice her father had pressed himself, Mary had never felt happier. The storm that blew up behind Worm's Head took them all unawares. Perhaps her parents thought it would pass as quickly as it came. Perhaps they just didn't want to let such a magical day be spoiled by the weather. Whatever the reason, they decided to stay sheltered beneath that brave beech tree. Except that Mary didn't stay with them. She couldn't remember why she had wanted to run out and play in the rain, but she had. And her father had raced after her and gathered her up in his powerful arms just as a fork of lightning found its way down to him from the darkest cloud in the sky. Okay. On to chapter 1 now. 6 years later. Bump, bump, bump. Mary's head banged repeatedly against the window of the beaten-up Land Rover as it bounced through the uneven field. Mary stared straight ahead, oblivious. This wasn't where she wanted to be. Bump, bump, bump. Out of the corner of her eye, Mary could see her mum, Rhian, trying to think of something to say. Might knock some sense into me, sighed Mary. Rhian smiled, but Mary didn't turn round. They returned to their customary awkward silence. Rain started splattering the windscreen. Rhian emerged the ancient wipers, and they squeaked and creaked the window a smeary kind of clean. After what seemed like an age, Rhian pulled up in the corner of a field. Mary could see the calf lying on the ground, its breathing rapid and shallow. Her mum nodded towards it. Why don't you go and take a look this time? Mary frowned. That wasn't how it usually worked. Normally, Rhian would go and see to a sick animal, and Mary would only help if it was required. But I don't know what to do. You're old enough, Mary, said Rhian with an encouraging nod. It would be a big help to me. But it wasn't that simple. Caring for animals was in Rhian's blood. She had an instinct for it. Mary couldn't even keep a woodlouse in a matchbox overnight without it expiring. Her father hadn't been a natural farmer either. He'd been a geologist, but he did have green fingers, creating a kitchen garden behind the farmhouse. Everyone said he and Rhian made the perfect team. And then, after the storm, the team was just Rhian and Mary. And it wasn't perfect anymore. Now her dad's once beautifully tended garden was a sad, tangled mess. Rhian had to spend all her time in the fields with the cows, and Mary was expected to help, whether she wanted to or not. Against her better judgment, Mary creaked open the rusty Land Rover door and rolled out into the rain. It was coming horizontally off the Bristol Channel and made her squint. She bent down in front of the calf, softly holding out a hand to pat its head, trying to stay as far away from it as possible. "What's the problem?" she whispered, trying not to look it directly in the eye. The calf let out a strangled moo. She could feel it shivering under her hand. "I know you can't communicate verbally," she said, "but I'm going to guess that you're cold and you need some kind of shelter and warmth. So let's get you inside." Gripping the calf's flanks, Mary tried to raise it up onto its feet, but it bellowed out in pain. Rhian was already out of the car and hurrying towards them. "Mary, stop!" she yelled. Mary jumped back. "What?" Rhian held the calf still. "It's got a broken leg. You can't move it." "But how would I know that?" pleaded Mary. "I'm sorry. It's my fault," said Rhian, more quietly now. "I shouldn't have asked you." Mary climbed back into the vehicle and watched through the mud-splattered window as Rhian tended to the calf. She found a bag of Haribo in the glove compartment and guiltily started working her way through it. The bag was finished and discarded on the floor by the time the driver's door opened again. "I'll need to get the vet out," said Rhian as she turned the key in the ignition of the car and shifted the gears into reverse. "Is it okay if I..." asked Mary, pointing to a sturdy rucksack on the back seat. "Now?" asked Rhian. "We've got that fence to repair in the corner padlock and bales to stack in the barn." There was never nothing to do on the farm, and it always needed doing yesterday. "While it's still light," begged Mary. "Do you really have to, love?" Mary slumped back. She knew her plans were going to have to wait, just like they always did. But for once, Rhian sighed and relented. "Well, I suppose the bales can wait till Saturday, but stay away from the cliffs in case there's a rock fall. It's more dangerous when it's been raining, and watch the tides. Yes, I know all of this, Mum." Mary jumped out eagerly before her mum changed her mind. She slammed the door behind her, slung her bag over her shoulder and nodded an apology to the baby cow. A spring now back in her step, Mary hiked across the field towards a gate. Climbing over it, she paused for a moment to take in the view. The rain was easing off now, and the sun was breaking through the heavy clouds, throwing shafts of light down onto the Glamorgan coast, across the channel and onto the Somerset hills beyond. Off to her right, a pristine white lighthouse seemed spotlit on the cliff top. She smiled to herself and jumped down, making her way along a hedgerow towards the cliff path. Before long, she was down on the beach. She breathed deeply as the sea breeze gently pushed her hair back from her face. This was Mary in her element. She swung her rucksack down onto the rocks, pulled it wide open and gazed lovingly inside. "Hello again, my friends," she said. One by one, she lifted out the contents: a large hammer, a chisel, a brush, and last but not least, a white hard hat and a pair of clear safety goggles. "Let's get to work," she said. And that brings us to the end of chapter 1. Hope you enjoyed that. We'll have to find out what Mary's going to get up to with her hammer on the cliffs, and we'll find out next in chapter 2. I'll see you then.